Hi, this is Ade Taylor from SecureLink UK. Welcome to this short demo where I'm going to be running through a comparison of two antivirus, anti-malware engines. In this particular case, it's the Microsoft Forefront Endpoint Protection 2010 and Cylance Next Gen Endpoint System. Let me just check the setup here for you and show you what we're going to do. So I've got two virtual machines running. They're both built on identical Windows 7 Ultimate 64-bit platforms. One of them, the one that we have in front of us here right now, is running Microsoft Forefront, and as you can see, it's up to date. I've patched it fully; it's all ready to go. The Forefront, incidentally, is the platform that became Windows Defender. It behaves in a very similar way. It's pretty much identical from an operational point of view. So this machine here is running Forefront, and then I have the other one running in the background, which is running Cylance and is not running any other antivirus. So just to show you a little bit about the machines themselves, they in themselves have been fully patched with all the Microsoft patches. They're both running Service Pack 1, they're both on the same build, and they're both running 4 gigabytes of RAM. So they were built from cloning each other, so they are completely identical. So let's start with the Forefront demo. So what I have is some malware which I've downloaded from, in this particular case, Test My AV. Now we've got access to malware from various different places, but I like to use, when I'm doing these particular tests, I do like to use malware which is available to the public, because anyone can go on to Test My AV and download the same malware that I'm using for these tests with a free account. We do get lots of malware from vendors and from other third parties, but I think in order to be fully independent, we should use stuff which is available to you, the customer. So I've got the same pieces of malware available to both machines. I'm going to run the tests with identical malware on each machine, and we're going to compare the results and see what happens. So I'll talk you through the process that I'm doing here. So this is the Microsoft Forefront enabled machine, and I've got some pre-packed malware here, which I downloaded from Test My AV a little bit earlier on. It's fairly fresh, March the 20th, so we are now on March the 21st. So yesterday, in fact, is when this stuff was collected, which means it's probably been in the wild for up to 5 days by the time it's been captured, assessed, and packaged up by Test My AV. That's probably the only disadvantage to using the free sites, is that sometimes you're not quite as current, but for our purposes it's perfectly okay. We tend to find that AV engines which are reliant on signatures should be completely up to date within 24 hours, and all of them will have an updated signature for stuff that's out in the wild that hasn't been seen before, normally within 48 hours. So it also keeps the test fair, to keep the malware a little bit older, because to be fair to Microsoft, they don't claim to have huge performance in detecting day zero or mutated malware. So just to keep things on a bit of an even keel, we won't go for all elite day zero mutated malware. It's not the stuff you're going to see on a daily basis. It is a risk. It's not the stuff you're going to see every day. But it's also unfair to choose stuff which I know is just going to evade Microsoft from day one. So having said all that, so I'm going to copy this zipped file, and there's a Windows file, a Windows warning there when I right click on it, which tells me that there may well be something wrong with this. That's not Forefront telling me that, that's the operating system, and it's saying that basically because it can't see inside the file, which is fine. So I'm just going to OK that. I'm going to copy that across to my desktop from my local NAS here. And then the easiest way to do this, There are a number of ways to do this. I've now got live malware sitting on my desktop, which is of course why we use virtual machines to do this. Wouldn't suggest trying this at home. And what I could do is unzip all of that malware. There, in this particular case, I think there's 109 files in there. We'll see that in a second anyway. I could unzip all of that, but that's and try and execute those files one at a time. It takes a very long time. It's very CPU intensive, and it has the big disadvantage that as soon as a particular piece of ransomware, for example, gets through, it will brick the machine, and that's the end of the demo. So if we're going to do that, let's do that at the end. So standard practice here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan that entire folder with Forefront. So let's just get a few things running here because it's useful to see what's going on with the computer performance itself while we're doing this. So there you go, straightforward CPU and RAM utilization there. It's quite happy at the moment, as you can see. Right, so we'll start that scan off, and off it goes. And this zip file is not encrypted, so it's not password protected, so it's quite happily going through it. As you can see, it's scanning the files individually. The other thing to note, because this is a very traditional antivirus engine, it's comparing to signatures, it's looking for well-known characteristics of malware. So the CPU, as you can see here, is maxed out at 100%. That probably won't change in my experience the entire time that's going on. Okay, look, so there you go. The scan is complete. Pretty quick, pretty impressive actually. It's completed 109, yeah, it was 109 files. So there's 109 files in that folder. Of those, it's detected 29 potential threats. Okay, so let's bear that in mind. Let's have a look at some of the details here. So these are effectively the threats it's recognised. There's some pretty nasty stuff in there. It's all current, but a lot of it, to be honest, is mutated from stuff that's been out there for quite a while. So we've got vFlooder, for example, which has been around for a long time. Agent bypass as well. And this is a mixture. It's a pick and mix, if you like, of ransomware and straightforward malware and rapidly propagating threats. So a load of unpleasant stuff in there, and a couple of keyloggers just for good measure. So we'll leave that one as it is there. We won't attempt to go and do a cleanup on that at the moment. If we go over to, I'll come back to that in a second. If we go over to the Cylance machine, just one thing to explain about the Cylance machine. So as I said, it is running Cylance. It's not running Windows Defender or Microsoft protection of any kind, and that's actually easier said than done, particularly from Windows 7 onwards, because it comes integrated. Defender particularly comes integrated into the operating system. The only way to permanently disable it on reboot is to do a little registry hack here, and I'll just show you what that looks like. It simply, if you forget the rest of this bump here, it's basically turning Defender off in the registry. So if you do that, reboot the system, you will get to the point where Defender doesn't run, which is the only way to make this as a level playing field. So you can see there that the WinDefend service is stopped. It's not running. The only thing that's running is Cylance. Okay, so let's do the same thing as we did on the other machine. Go and get the same set of malware from the same source. I must actually clear up my NAS because it's full of rather unpleasant things now. Right, here we go. So let's do the same thing. We'll copy that across to our desktop, like so. And now it's time to explain a slight difference between the way Cylance runs and the way traditional AVs run. So you may well be able to see on the bottom here that background detection is running, and it is going along, chugging along, inspecting files in a very similar way to how a traditional AV would. It would do it will chug along through the hard drive, looking for malicious software. The difference between the way Cylance does it and the way a signature-based system does it is that Cylance is very light touch, and this is a feature of all the next-gen software, actually, all the next-gen endpoint software. It's not using signatures, so it's not having to do a lookup against the database every time it finds a file. It's also not analyzing every file. The way background detection works on Cylance is it's kind of random. It'll look occasionally at folders that you've recently opened, and over time it will get through the entire machine. But it doesn't do it in anything of a hurry. It doesn't prioritize its background scanning over anything else that it's doing. And the reason it does that is because as soon as they take the view, Cylance in particular, take the view that unless a malicious file is running, you don't need to worry about it. And again, you know, that could sound like a bit of a risk in and of itself, and I understand why that might sound a bit risky. But if you think about it, the way when they say running, they don't mean actually just running. They mean any interaction at all with the operating system. So they'll only assess dynamically the threat profile of a file when you try and do something with it, when the operating system tries to interact with it, when you try and run it, when you try and copy it, you right click it, you do anything to it. The rest of the time it could easily be sitting on your machine doing nothing. It's not being copied over the network, nothing's trying to talk to it, it's not being copied into RAM, it's just sitting there. So they take the view that, you know, that's fine, that's perfectly safe. There is no risk with having that there, because as soon as something tries to happen to that file or it tries to do anything, they will find it. And you'll see that Cylance has been idle all the time I've been rattling on the last few minutes, and now it's just decided to have a little look at a file again there now. So slight difference. So what that means is there is no context sensitive. I can't right click this file, this zip file full of nasty malware, and say scan with Cylance. There is no facility for doing that. It doesn't operate in that way. What I can do, however, is I can take the step of opening that, which of course is perhaps the thing, the point where it becomes we turn these potential threats into actual threats. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to change these files for the sake of expediency. I'm going to make these files executable because they're packed files at the moment, and that just means basically that their hash and their extension file has been changed so that they will attempt to evade signatures. Same level playing field, same thing with Forefront. Forefront's done a good job over on the other machine so far. It's found some of the files right. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to not going to change it to pictures. I'm going to make those files executable so that they immediately become recognizable as something which I can double click on and run, right? Because that makes it a lot easier for me to force Cylance to look at them. I will attempt to do this ridiculously long string. Oh, there we go. That's annoying. Okay, sorry about that brief pause. The sharp-eyed among you will have noticed me attempting to change into a directory which is in fact a zip file. So let me extract that so that I can then go in and change all those files to executable. Right, okay, that's a lot better. It's, what is it? It's 20 to 6 on a Tuesday evening, so you'll have to bear with me. Right, so these directory structures are absolutely horrific. There we go, there they all are. So at the moment I can double click on them, but Windows doesn't associate a program with them, so it's not going to try and run them. if I do this, I can make them appear to be executable. He said, there we go. So we've now got a load of executable files in there. There they all are, with their complete with their icons back in place. They're comedy icons in most cases. I like that this one's actually bizarrely in a very brave move. That is an Adobe exploit, and they've given it an Adobe icon. So you've got to give them credit for their chutzpah. Right. So if we keep our eyes on the console down here, I'm going to demonstrate what happens when I try and execute one of these files. So bear in mind, background detection is running. I haven't tried to do anything with this folder. The operating system hasn't tried to do anything with it, right? So it's not, Cylance does not get involved, right? So if I try and run that one, so the error that's happened there is typical. The file has disappeared before Windows knows it's even there. So let me just OK that. If I go down here, we've now got an event popped up. That's what Cylance saw. It saw me try and execute that file, and the information you get back from Cylance is very, very lightweight. Right? It says this tried to happen, I killed it, and I'll show you how we can get some more information out of that. But at the moment, that's all there is, and that's all there ever is at the endpoint. Right? Cylance is very light touch. It gives you the information it needs to give you, and no more. So you notice the file has gone from here, and it went before Windows even noticed we were trying to run it, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a second. So if I try another one here, right, so can't find it, it's gone. Even though I could browse to it in Explorer, as soon as I tried to run it, it was deleted, intercepted, deleted, and there it's popped up there as another threat. It was intercepted, deleted before Windows actually got a chance to do anything with it, and that's because Cylance runs at a kernel level. It runs on as a shim on the kernel. So it's able to detect, identify many thousands of characteristics of a file, about what that file is, not just what it looks like, but what it is attempting to do, and what it's likely to try to do, and what its capabilities are. And it can do all of those calculations before the operating system actually gets to see the file, or gets to try and execute the file. So it's not like I've executed it and then Cylance has said, that doesn't look great, I better do something about that. Cylance is the thing that's made the decision before it goes to the operating system. There's another one there I've just done. So what you'll see is, over time, Cylance is now interested in this folder, because I've now tried to run more than one thing from it, which has been malicious. So it will now prioritize having a look at that folder. So what we'll see probably over the next couple of minutes is that all the files in that folder will disappear. Important to bear in mind that we had 96 files here, coupled with the 3 that we've just quarantined, so 99 in total. Right? So that's an interesting number to bear in mind. I'll point out why in a bit. So back over here, we've got these 29 threats on the Microsoft machine, which we knew about, and it's told us what it wants to do with them. All seems fairly reasonable. Combination of disinfect, remove, and quarantine. Never really understood why Windows does that. I mean, if it knows that they're bad, well, it's not just Windows, to be honest. It's lots of other anti-malware, antivirus products. They recommend different things for different levels of malice, but you know, whatever. So let it go ahead and apply those actions. It's now cleaned up my computer. Great, as you can see here, it's done its thing. Right, so as far as it's concerned, everything quite happy. It's got rid of its 29 things. Now, what you'll remember is that there weren't 29, there were originally 109 items in that folder, all of which we absolutely know to be malicious. So the detection rate for Microsoft is pretty poor. Uh, that's not necessarily the fault of the Microsoft program. It's just the way it runs. If it can't find a signature which matches, which signatures are extremely easy to evade just by changing the hash of a file, and these hashes are changed dynamically, automatically all the time. In a way that really old malware can still come back to life and come back into play on a regular basis just by changing its hash to evade signature-based systems. It's working. Forefront is working as it's designed to work. It's doing a good job, but it's reliant on signatures. So it is going to miss some of those, and some of them, despite the fact that, like I said earlier on, might be 4 or 5 days old, are probably still too young to appear in the signature table. And even if they are, the signature could have changed by the time the table was updated. So we've got this issue now where we've got this desktop folder here that's still got loads of malware in it, and Forefront is not detecting it right. And the other issue we've got is the whole time this has been happening, our CPU is absolutely flat out. So not only is it not enormously effective protection, it's also effectively disabling the machine anyway. So yeah, I can use this machine, but if I wanted to give any do any real heavy workload on this machine, it might as well be infected with a virus, right? So there you go. It's found the 29 threats that it's already identified for me. For some reason, it hasn't managed to remove them the first time, so we'll try and get it to do it again. But out of those 109, it's still only come up with 29. So a significant amount of stuff getting through there. I'm reluctant to open this actually. Yeah, so as we can see, we've still got 99 items there. I know that if I change one of these to executable and run it, I'll kill the machine, and that's fairly clear from here that it doesn't see a problem with most of them. So rather than do that, let's go back over here and see how we're getting on. So most of the malware's still here, still sitting in this folder. Let's pick another one at random. Yeah, dead. Can't see it, gone. Look at the observe the CPU usage all the time I'm doing this. Virtually nothing happening. It's the detection rate of Cylance is, because of the way it works, because it doesn't look at what a file is. Remember, it looks at what it does. They'll claim 100% effectiveness. In our own independent testing, we're seeing very high 90s, and that's with a mix of complete day zero unknown malware and stuff that's been out there for a long time. So it is incredibly effective. It's very low weight. It's very light touch. And what I'll show you now, actually, so that's still chugging along, trying to do its thing over here. What I'll show you now is because you will have noticed that there is no real information here. We talked about this a bit earlier on. So Cylance isn't giving you a huge amount of feedback in what it's doing and why it's done it. And that's because it is all it's managed from a cloud-based system. So what I'll do is I will log in over here. He said, talking about a screen that you guys can't see. As soon as I've logged in, I'll bring it over so that you can. I'll log into the web-based portal and show you what Cylance is reporting. Okay, so this is the Cylance dashboard. If we look at the immediate front end you get, it's really straightforward. As you can imagine, it shows you a couple of numbers and graphs on the left here, which de rigueur these days. And what this is saying here is it's not saying that these are the machine. This is your level of protection. So you've got 8% unprotected, or in this case 11% unprotected. What it's saying is, out of the machines which have reported an issue, I, as an administrator or whoever, has taken 92% action on 92% of those threats. Doesn't mean those threats exist. It means we've only done something about 92% of them. And it's a bit of a weird way to represent it, but the idea is that they have this concept of threat zero. So the idea is that if this is 100%, this is 100%, it means all the devices in your network are running Cylance, and all of those that have reported a problem, you have dealt with. And this, of course, is the big number, the amount of files that we've analysed on this particular tenant since we started running it. Some top 10 lists here. No surprise to me, because this is our own tenant that we use for our internal production and also for our proofs of concept and customer testing and demos. Absolutely no surprise to me that most of these files and devices relate to our penetration testing team. Yeah, that's all recognisable. So from my point of view, that's all fine. Wouldn't be for most customers, I'm absolutely sure, but I'm used to seeing those, and we know what they are and where they are. It's the nasty pen tester tools. So if we look at the specific device we were just testing, and let me go back and show you what that machine name is as far as Cylance is concerned. So Cylance sees this machine, it takes the Windows machine effectively. So because I've just left it to, I've left VMware to give it a default name, it's a bit of a weird one. So KM2N is what we're looking for over here. So machine KM2N, there it is. It's the online one. There's several in there because I've been doing tests for various people. So this gives you a little bit more information about the machine. It's telling us that it's quarantined seven files, 7 threats. It gives us the IP address and the MAC address of the machine, and a little bit of information about the when it last saw it and what the operating system and user is on that machine. So if we scroll down here a little bit, we can see those threats that we ourselves just tried to execute. We can see what it thought of them, and we can find out a little bit more information about them. There are a number of ways you can do this. So the first time you click on the file, the first thing you see is, okay, what's the score? What's the Cylance score? So they are saying they're 100% sure that this file is bad, and they're saying that 100% of our users, and in Nebulous Secure Link as it is now, must change that, and 100% of all other Cylance users have quarantined that, which gives you, quite a high level of confidence. If you particularly want to, you can mark it safe across your estate. Wouldn't recommend it, and you can actually download the file, because by default none of these files will come up from the hosts to the Cylance cloud. If I click on that download file button, it will go and request from the Cylance client on the endpoint a copy of the file, which will go up to the cloud and then back down to me, if you wanted to do any kind of further analysis on it, which sometimes can be useful. So that's the file we tried to execute, and that's the machine name. If I look at some evidence reports, it tells me a definition of the threat indicators, tells me why it thought that file was bad. Don't forget, all of this is happening prior to the operating system getting involved, so it's established these threat indicators, and there's lots more of them. It's established these threat indicators without the operating system getting involved. If I look at the detailed threat data, I can see some more information about the file itself, including all the hashes, and what it attempted to do, if it's actually collected that information. So there you go. So reasonably detailed. It's not a forensic platform, and it's not designed to be. There is a separate Cylance product called Optics, which will give you more detailed forensics. It's just an addition to the endpoint, which you can install, and it's no additional cost. It's just licensed with the Cylance product, which will give you much more detailed deep dive of the forensics. Should that be something you want to look at, it is useful. Again, Cylance take the view, most of the next gen endpoint vendors take the view, and to be fair, we take the view that unless you're going to use that information, so unless you are able to act on that information, and you have people in your organization who can make the best of that analysis, it may not be worth doing. So in terms of incident response, you need people who are going to be able to analyze that data and step through all the actions that file took, or that piece of software took or tried to take, in order to come up with any meaningful information. If you don't have those people, you don't have that service in place, there is an argument that it's kind of a pointless exercise, right? So let's go back to our machines and see what's going on. Oh yes, so the only other thing I haven't explained here is that policy is configurable. The machines are added into zones, which basically gives you discrete control over groups of machines which can be automatically added to those zones, or it's a multi-tenant system, so you can have different departments, different customers, whatever you want within your tenant by adding them into zones. As you can see, we have a few different ones here, one of which is our malware testing zone. If I look at the if I look at our zones here, I can show you exactly how they're configured in terms of the level of protection that we apply. So if I look at the malware testing zone, and I can see that the policy everything on or malware test optics on is enabled. So that policy refers to all of the machines within that zone. So let's look at everything on. And as you can see, this is incredibly intuitive. I know I'm flicking through it quite fast, but it is really easy to understand what's going on. It's easy to drive this. And so what we're doing, what the everything on policy says is, or dictates, is that file actions, we're going to auto-quarantine, we're going to auto-quarantine executions, memory actions, we are going to protect memory, and we're going to look for various types of exploitation, process injection. And you have a number of options. You can ignore, alert, block, or terminate those things. Protection settings, do I want to stop the application itself from being shut down? Do I want to detect when other processes are trying to interfere with it? It's, you know, fairly standard stuff, but all in one place, and all very easy to control. One point that's worth mentioning here: application control. That's a gold build function. So we do have some customers, and there are a number of ways to do this, but we do have some customers who have a very rigorous gold build for their machines. They don't want it changed in any way, so for that particular application, what you can say is you can install Cylance on a gold build machine, and you can say, okay, this is it, this is how it works, I don't want anything else added to or taken away from this machine. You can do that, tick the application control button for that group or that device, and then nothing can change on that machine, you know, literally nothing. So applies to some customers with some machines in certain environments, but certainly not to everybody. So that's a little bit about the console. Back over here, as you can see, we've still got Cylance quite happily chugging along. It's still quite happily ignoring those files because they haven't done anything, unless I try and do something. You will find it can sometimes be quite random. So you will find, you know, sometimes you come back to this folder and it's deleted all the files because it suddenly found them interesting and it's gone and got rid of all of them. In this particular case, it seems a little bit reluctant to do so. It's not because it's not working, it's because as soon as I try and interact with them, it's going to get rid of them, and all the time I'm not interacting with them, the operating system's not interacting with them, it doesn't care. You see, performance is still fine, and the machine is still running quite happily. So, if I go back to our Windows machine, it's still trying to apply the actions we took a little while ago. It's still at 100% CPU. As you remember, it found 29 out of that 109 items, and it's still attempting to do disinfect or removal or whatever it is it wants to do to those, whatever it's decided is worth doing. And don't forget, this is the second pass, so it did this once before and said, okay, I found those 29 files, I'm going to get rid of them, and then it's found them again, and it's doing the same thing again. So it obviously didn't work properly the first time, which is, you know, it's pretty typical actually. And again, it's not necessarily a fault of the system. It was written to do what it does, but that was a long time ago. And as you can see, I can take any of these files at random. I'm not going to be able to execute any of them. It doesn't matter which one I try and run. It's just not going to work. So apologies if you're getting a constant ding. I'm not sure if we're reporting if I'm recording the computer audio or not. So that's a reasonably quick overview. I am, of course, very happy to do these in person with your own malware, with malware you've downloaded, you know, whatever it is you want to do. This particular one is designed specifically to show you. Sebastian asked me to show you guys specifically against forefront endpoint protection, so might have gone a bit off script, but I'm sure you'll bear with me, and thank you very much for your time. If there's anything else you need to know, just contact Seb and myself. Give me a shout. Cheers, bye.